The galaxy had known only one ruler for nearly 500 years, the Ivath Dominion. Towering insectoid overlords, their empire stretched across the stars, crushing entire civilizations under their chitinous heel. They were brutal, efficient, and unwavering in their rule. Resistance was met with annihilation. And yet, in the dark recesses of the cosmos, a fire still burned. Humanity, the last species to resist the Dominion, had been pushed to the brink. Earth was gone, glassed by orbital bombardment. The once mighty Terran fleet was shattered, its remnants scattered across asteroid belts and abandoned colonies. The few million survivors who remained hid in deep space stations, drifting on barely functioning vessels, scraping by in lawless sectors of the galaxy. It was in one such forsaken place, Outpost Theta 9, hidden within the dense clouds of the Helios Nebula, that the last hope of humanity gathered. A former Terran officer, Commander Elias Rourke, paced before a worn-out hollow table, its flickering blue display casting sharp shadows across the ragtag crew assembled before him. "This is it," Rourke said, his voice gravelly from years of hardship. "We've run, we've hid, and we've watched them butcher our people like cattle. But today, that ends." A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the group. They were scavengers, smugglers, and remnants of old military units. There was no grand fleet, no powerful war machine behind them, just a few barely operational ships, outdated weapons, and a desperate desire to see the Ivath pay. A woman stepped forward, her cybernetic eye flashing red. Captain Serena Vale, once a top pilot for the Terran Navy, now reduced to running contraband in the outer fringes. "Commander," she said, arms crossed. "What exactly are we supposed to do? Take on the Ivath with these rust buckets?" "We don't need numbers," Rourke countered. "We need strategy. We need to remind the galaxy that the Ivath can bleed." He tapped the console, and a 3D model of a massive orbital facility appeared, Sci-Fi Prime, a key processing hub for the Ivath. It was where countless enslaved species were transported, broken, and converted into living biomachines to serve the Dominion. "This station is a symbol of their power," Rourke continued. "But it's also a weakness. If we hit it hard, we prove to the galaxy that the Ivath are not invincible. We spark something greater than ourselves." Silence hung in the air. The idea was insane. Sci-Fi Prime was a fortress. No one had ever struck a Dominion stronghold and lived to tell the tale. But in their eyes, a glimmer of something long buried began to surface: hope. A grizzled old engineer, Joran Vex, let out a dry chuckle. "Hell, if we're gonna go out, might as well do it making history." Others nodded, reluctant but resolute. Serena exhaled sharply. "Fine. But if we do this, we do it smart. We'll need intel, a way in, and something big enough to rip that station apart." Rourke smirked. "Already working on it." At the back of the room, a hooded figure finally spoke. "I can get you in." The group turned to face the speaker, Kieran, a former Dominion scientist who defected years ago. His knowledge of the Ivath's technology was invaluable, but few trusted him. He had once served the enemy, after all. Rourke nodded. "Then let's get to work. We have one shot at this, and we're not wasting it." The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The battered frigate Renegade Dawn emerged from hyperspace, its hull scarred from years of battle and scavenged repairs. Before it stretched the dead world of Karthos V, a barren, toxic wasteland where the last great war of the pre-Dominion era had ended in fire. Deep beneath its surface, hidden among the ruins of an ancient civilization, lay their prize, a forgotten superweapon, one capable of turning the tide against the Ivath Dominion. Inside the Renegade Dawn's command center, Rourke stood with his arms crossed, studying the holographic map of Karthos V. "We have 12 hours before Dominion patrols sweep through this sector," he said. "We get in, find the weapon, and get out." Serena Vale leaned against the console, her cybernetic eye glowing as she scanned the data. "This planet's been dead for centuries. How do we even know the weapon still exists?" Kieran, the former Dominion scientist, stepped forward. "Because the Ivath never found it. They searched for decades, but Carthose was too irradiated, too unstable. Their scans couldn't penetrate the underground vaults. He pointed to a section of the map. Here. This vault belonged to the Kthari, a race that fought the Ivath to a standstill before they were wiped out. If the weapon is anywhere, it's here. Joran Vex, the grizzled engineer, snorted. And let me guess. It's deep underground, behind some unbreakable door, surrounded by death traps? Kieran nodded. Most likely. The ship's pilot, a young but reckless flyer named Cass, grinned. Well, it wouldn't be fun otherwise. #### landing on a dead world. The renegade dawn descended through thick, storm-laden clouds, its shields flickering as they absorbed the planet's radiation. Below, jagged ruins jutted from the ashen surface like the bones of a long-dead giant. As they touched down, the ground shuddered beneath them. Seismic instability, Joran muttered. This place isn't gonna last forever. Armed with pulse rifles and radiation suits, the team advanced into the ruins. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of debris beneath their boots. Shadows twisted in the flickering light of their wrist lamps. Finally, they reached the entrance to the Kthari vault, an enormous black doorway embedded in the rock, covered in alien symbols. It hummed faintly with energy, still functional after all these years. Serena stepped forward. Can you open it? Kieran placed his hand on a control panel, whispering in the Kthari tongue. The door trembled, then slid open with a deep, grinding groan. A tunnel stretched into the darkness beyond. They moved cautiously, the air thick with dust. Strange carvings lined the walls, depictions of battles, towering war machines, and, at the center of it all, a massive structure wreathed in energy. The Kthari called it, the Heart of Wrath, Kieran explained. A weapon capable of unraveling the Ivath's biological enhancements, reducing them to nothing more than the weak, organic creatures they once were. Rourke's jaw tightened. Then let's find it before they do. #### an unexpected threat. Deeper inside, they finally found it, a massive, pulsating core of unknown energy, held within a containment field. The Heart of Wrath. Joran whistled. That thing looks like it could eat a sun. Kieran approached the controls. It's dormant. But with the right activation sequence. A sudden clang echoed behind them. Weapons snapped up. Serena cursed. We're not alone. From the shadows, figures emerged, humanoid, but twisted, their skin gray and mottled. Their eyes burned with unnatural light. Survivors? Cass whispered. No, Kieran said, his voice grim. Ivath experiments. Failed ones. The creatures lunged. Pulse rifles blazed as the team fought for their lives, the twisted abominations moving unnaturally fast. Serena drove her boot into one's chest, sending it sprawling. Joran tossed an explosive charge, obliterating 3 at once. Rourke fired point-blank into the skull of a shrieking monstrosity. We have what we came for. Move. Kieran initiated the weapon's extraction process. The containment field flickered, releasing the Heart of Wrath into a portable core unit. The walls trembled. The ground cracked. The vault was collapsing. The team sprinted for the exit, dodging falling debris as the entire structure caved in behind them. With seconds to spare, they burst onto the surface and into the renegade dawn. Cass powered up the engines, and the ship roared skyward just as the ruins collapsed into a smoking crater below. As they escaped into the void, Rourke looked down at the glowing core in Kieran's hands. We have the weapon, he said. Now we just need a way to use it. The renegade dawn hurtled through deep space, its engines burning hard to escape the decaying orbit of Carthose V. Inside, the stolen weapon pulsed with an eerie glow, casting flickering shadows across the crew's faces. In the war room, Rourke, Serena, Kieran, and Joran gathered around a holographic display. The Heart of Wrath sat in a containment unit, humming with barely restrained energy. This thing can kill the Ivath, Serena said, arms crossed. But how do we use it? Throw it at them and hope for the best? Kieran shook his head. It's not a bomb. It's a biological disruptor, designed to break down the IVATH's genetic modifications. We need a way to distribute it. Joran rubbed his temples. You mean, we need a delivery system? Rourke leaned forward. Then we find one. There's only one place left with the tech we need, Titan's Grave. A hush fell over the room. Titan's Grave was an infamous black market hub hidden in an asteroid belt, a haven for exiled scientists, mercenaries, and warlords. If they could find the right contacts, they might be able to turn the Heart of Wrath into a planet-killing bioweapon. Serena exhaled. Great. Just one problem, the Dominion knows about Titan's Grave too. #### a dangerous deal. The renegade Dawn slipped into the asteroid belt, weaving between tumbling rocks the size of small moons. Ahead, the space station loomed, a massive, rusted construct cobbled together from 100 different wrecks. It had no official government, just a collection of crime lords who ruled through force and fear. As the crew disembarked, the stench of oil, sweat, and desperation filled their lungs. Armed guards patrolled the walkways, watching newcomers with suspicion. Their target, Dr. Valen Rowe, a former Dominion scientist turned black market weapons dealer. Inside a dimly lit chamber filled with scavenged Dominion tech, Valen sat reclined on a throne of scrap, flanked by heavily armed mercenaries. You bring me something interesting, Commander Rourke? Valen asked, his reptilian eyes gleaming. Rourke gestured to Kieran, who held up a containment unit displaying the Heart of Wrath's eerie glow. Valen's eyes widened. You have my attention. Kieran stepped forward. We need a way to disperse it. A planet-wide release. Valen stroked his chin. That's ambitious. Doable, but costly. Joran scowled. We don't have credits, but we have firepower. Valen grinned. Then I have a job for you. #### a deadly betrayal. Their mission was simple, intercept a Dominion transport carrying classified data. But as the team ambushed the convoy, alarms blared. This was a trap. Serena shouted, firing at approaching Dominion forces. From the shadows, Dominion soldiers swarmed the battlefield, weapons blazing. At their center stood a towering IVATH commander, its chitinous armor gleaming under the firelight. Rourke's blood ran cold. They knew we were coming. A voice crackled in their comms. Valen. Apologies, Commander, but the Dominion pays better. Rourke cursed. They had been sold out. The IVATH commander stepped forward, mandibles clicking. Humanity's last warriors, nothing more than insects scurrying in the dark. Serena's eye flickered with rage. We'll show you, insects. The battle erupted, and the fate of the rebellion hung in the balance. Blaster fire streaked through the air as the renegade Dawn's crew fought for their lives. Titan's Grave had become a war zone, the betrayal setting off a chain reaction of violence. Mercenary factions turned on each other, and Dominion soldiers pushed forward, determined to crush the last remnants of humanity. Rourke ducked behind a pile of scrap, his rifle overheating from constant fire. We need an exit, now! Cass's voice crackled over the comms. I'm warming up the engines, but we've got inbound fighters. Serena was already moving, her cybernetic eye scanning the battlefield for weaknesses. She spotted a fuel line running beneath the station's main corridor. Joran, explosives, there. Joran grinned, tossing a detonation charge onto the pipe. Everybody down. The explosion ripped through the station, sending shockwaves through the structure. The blast took out half the Dominion forces, giving the team an opening. This way! Kieran shouted, leading them through the collapsing hallways toward the docks. #### a shocking revelation. As they ran, alarms blared. Overhead screens flickered to life, broadcasting a transmission across the station. The image made Rourke stop cold. It was Admiral Carthes, the IVATH Dominion's highest-ranking warlord, addressing the galaxy. Citizens of the Dominion, the human insurgents have stolen a weapon of mass destruction. They plan to unleash it upon our great empire. Serena clenched her fists. That bastard. Carthes continued, his mandibles clicking. We cannot allow these criminals to threaten peace. Any system that harbors them will face annihilation. A collective hush fell over the crowd. Even the mercenaries and pirates hesitated. The Dominion was declaring total war. They're turning the entire galaxy against us, Kieran muttered. Then, Carthes spoke one final line that made Rourke's blood run cold. Our spies have already infiltrated their ranks. ### betrayal from within. The words had barely registered when Kieran suddenly cried out, clutching his stomach. Blood seeped between his fingers. Joran staggered back, his pistol raised. For a moment, nobody moved. Joran? Rourke's voice was barely above a whisper. Joran's face was hard, his expression unreadable. It's over, Rourke. Serena raised her gun, fury in her eyes. You sold us out? Joran took a step back, his aim steady. You don't get it. We can't win. The Ivath are too strong. I gave them the Heart of Wrath in exchange for amnesty. It was the only way. Rourke felt his chest tighten. You gave them the weapon? Joran nodded grimly. It's already gone. The world blurred around Rourke. The weapon they had risked everything for, the last hope of humanity, was now in the hands of the enemy. Serena pulled the trigger. Joran collapsed, his final breath escaping in a choked gasp. No one spoke. There was no time for grief. The Dominion was coming. Rourke forced himself to move. We have to get out of here. Now. ### the escape. The Renegade Dawn blasted off the station, dodging laser fire as Dominion ships gave chase. Cass pushed the engines to their limits, the ship shaking violently. Kieran, pale from his wound, struggled to speak. It's not over. There's a failsafe. Rourke grabbed his shoulders. What are you talking about? Kieran winced. The Heart of Wrath, it has a secondary function. If we can reach it before they activate it, we might still have a chance. Serena's eyes narrowed. Where did they take it? Kieran coughed, his voice weak. Zytheres Prime. Silence filled the cabin. Zytheres Prime. The Dominion's most fortified stronghold. Rourke set his jaw. Then that's where we go. The Renegade Dawn lurked at the edge of Dominion space, hidden within the turbulent storms of a dying star. Beyond the swirling plasma fields lay Zytheres Prime, the Ivath Dominion's most fortified stronghold, now housing the Heart of Wrath. Inside the war room, Rourke studied the station's schematics. It was an orbital fortress, ringed with defense turrets, shielded hangars, and a fleet large enough to crush entire civilizations. Serena leaned over the map, her expression grim. We can't just blast our way in. Even if we make it inside, getting out will be suicide. Kieran, still weak from his wound, spoke through clenched teeth. We don't have to fight their whole army. Just get me to the weapons control core. I can override its system and disable it before they activate it. Cass scoffed. So, we sneak into the most heavily guarded station in the galaxy, disable the weapon, and escape before they vaporize us? Great plan. Rourke smirked. It gets better. We're going in disguised as prisoners. ### the Trojan Horse Gambit. The plan was madness, but it was their only option. Serena and Rourke had intercepted a Dominion patrol earlier, 3 guards and a high-ranking Ivath officer. Their armor and bio-helmets were still intact. It was just a matter of slipping inside unnoticed. Rourke, Serena, and Cass donned the stolen armor, while Kieran and a few other crew members were bound in restraints, posing as captured insurgents. Their stolen Dominion transport carried fabricated clearance codes that would only last a few minutes before the station's AI detected the forgery. As they approached Zytheres Prime, a cold, mechanical voice crackled over the comms. Transport 77B, state your cargo and prisoner classifications. Rourke responded in his best Dominion accent. Prisoner transfer. High-value insurgents for Admiral Carthes. A pause. Then. Proceed to Docking Bay 12. Any deviation will result in immediate termination. As the transport drifted inside, the Renegade Dawn remained hidden in the asteroid belt, waiting for the signal to strike. Serena exhaled. We're in. But as they stepped off the ship, they were greeted by a figure they hadn't expected, Admiral Carthes himself, **. ### face to face with the monster. The Ivath warlord stood at the center of the hangar, flanked by 2 elite guards. His chitinous armor gleamed, and his 6 insectoid eyes scanned them with unsettling precision. Humans, Carthes rasped, his mandibles clicking. You scurry through the cracks of my empire like vermin. And yet, you always return. Rourke stiffened. The plan had just gone to hell. Carthes turned to Kieran, who was still playing the role of a bound prisoner. And you? Kieran Volis, the traitor. The last time we spoke, you were begging for your life. Kieran met his gaze without fear. And yet, here I am again. Annoying, isn't it? Carthes let out a low, chittering laugh. Your arrogance is meaningless. The heart of wrath is already prepared for deployment. Your rebellion is finished. Serena exchanged a subtle glance with Rourke. They had minutes before the alarm was raised. Then Carthes turned his eyes to Rourke. And you, something about you is familiar. Rourke's heart pounded. If the warlord recognized him, they were dead. Carthes tilted his head. His mandibles twitched. Then. Intruders. Raise the alarm. The deception was over. ### the battle for the weapon. Serena fired first, putting a plasma round straight through one of Carthes's guards. Cass lobbed an EMP grenade, frying the nearest security droids. The hangar exploded into chaos. Kieran and the other prisoners broke free of their restraints, grabbing weapons from the fallen guards. Rourke barked into his comms. Cass, signal the Renegade Dawn. We need that extraction now. Carthes roared in fury, his massive claws swiping at Serena. She dodged, rolling across the hangar floor and blasting him in the side, but his armor absorbed the impact. Carthes lunged, catching Serena by the throat. Your species is doomed, he hissed. Rourke fired his rifle into Carthes's back, forcing him to release her. As Serena gasped for breath, she threw a knife, embedding it in one of Carthes's smaller eyes. The warlord howled in rage. Go! Rourke shouted. Kieran and Cass sprinted toward the control core. If they didn't disable the Heart of Wrath now, the Ivath would unleash it on the last free colonies. ### the final countdown. Inside the control chamber, Kieran hacked into the Dominion systems as alarms blared. Security teams were converging on them. Hurry up, Kieran! Cass yelled, firing through the doorway. I'm trying, but Dominion encryption is... Wait. There. On the holoscreen, a countdown appeared, 5 minutes until activation. Kieran's fingers flew across the controls. I can't shut it down remotely, but I can overload the power core. Cass's eyes widened. You mean blow it up? Kieran smirked. Exactly. ### the last stand. Back in the hangar, Rourke and Serena were still locked in battle with Carthes. The warlord, wounded but still deadly, refused to go down. The Renegade Dawn swooped into the hangar, its side doors opening as gunners laid down suppressing fire. Cass's voice crackled over the comms. The core's overloading. We have 2 minutes before this whole place goes up. Rourke fired another round into Carthes's chest. The warlord staggered but still stood. Serena clenched her jaw. I've had enough of this bug. She grabbed a fallen Dominion grenade and shoved it into a crack in Carthes's armor. He realized too late. The explosion ripped him apart. Rourke and Serena sprinted for the ship, leaping aboard just as the Renegade Dawn blasted out of the hangar. Behind them, Hfy Prime erupted in flames. The Heart of Wrath, ***, and the Dominion's grip on the galaxy ***, was gone. The destruction of Hfy Prime sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Dominion's most fortified stronghold was gone, along with the Heart of Wrath, their ultimate weapon. Across the stars, resistance factions erupted in celebration. The Ivath's aura of invincibility had shattered. But the war wasn't over. Aboard the Renegade Dawn, the crew gathered in the dimly lit war room, the holotable flickering with intercepted Dominion transmissions. Rourke, Serena, Cass, and Kieran, still recovering from his wounds, listened in grim silence. The message was chilling. This is Supreme Commander Vortha. The destruction of Hfy Prime will not go unanswered. All Ivath fleets are to commence the final extermination protocol. Humanity's remnants must be purged. Serena clenched her fists. Final extermination? Kieran's face darkened. They're abandoning their control over occupied systems. If they can't rule us, they'll burn every last human colony to ash. Cass exhaled. So that's it. We win one battle, and they decide to end us all? Rourke's jaw tightened. Not if we stop them first. He brought up the next transmission. It showed the Dominion's fleet movements, ***, converging on one last target ***. Earth. ### the race home. The Renegade Dawn punched into faster-than-light travel, engines burning at maximum capacity. The battered crew had no time to rest. They had days before the Dominion fleet reached Sol, and the scattered remnants of Earth's defenses weren't strong enough to hold them back. Inside the bridge, Rourke and Kieran analyzed the incoming threat. The Dominion is sending everything, Kieran said, his voice grim. Over 1,000 warships. Orbital bombardment platforms. Planet cracker dreadnoughts. Cass whistled. And we've got, what? A handful of ragtag fleets and outdated defenses? Rourke stared at the display. Then we make it count. He turned to Serena. Send a transmission to every resistance cell, every surviving human warship, every mercenary willing to fight. Tell them this is it. The last stand. Serena nodded, her cybernetic eye flickering as she sent out the call. Across the galaxy, fractured human forces received the message. Some hesitated. Others responded instantly. One reply stood out, a signal from the Exodus fleet, the last of Earth's warships, hidden in deep space since the fall of Terra. Serena's eyes widened. Rourke, we have a fleet. ### the gathering storm. As the Renegade Dawn approached the Sol system, humanity's surviving fleets converged. From shattered colonies, hidden outposts, and rogue warbands, every ship capable of fighting arrived. On the bridge of the Exodus flagship, Rourke stood before Admiral Hayes, the last remaining leader of Earth's military. You really think we can hold them off? Hayes asked. Rourke met his gaze. We don't have a choice. Hayes sighed. Then we make it count. Across the system, defenses were activated. Old planetary cannons, scavenged Dominion tech, orbital debris fields turned into death traps, every last resource was put into play. Kieran patched into the fleet-wide comms. All ships, this is Kieran Volis. We are outnumbered. Outgunned. The Dominion thinks this is the end of humanity. They're wrong. Today, we show them why humanity never surrenders. Today, we take our home back. The transmission ended. Silence filled the void. Then, one by one, ships signaled back. They were ready. ### the Dominion arrives. The first Dominion ships emerged from hyperspace, ***, a wave of destruction blotting out the stars ***. Their dreadnoughts loomed, weapons primed for planetary annihilation. Then, the human fleet opened fire. The battle erupted across space as the final war for Earth began. Serena weaved the renegade Dawn through the chaos, firing railguns and launching torpedoes. Cass manned the turrets, picking off Ivath fighters. Kieran coordinated fleet maneuvers, exploiting every weakness. And Rourke led the charge, *** straight at the Dominion's flagship ***. The final battle had begun. The final battle for Earth raged across space. The void was a storm of fire and wreckage as human warships clashed with the overwhelming Dominion fleet. Plasma blasts and railgun rounds illuminated the darkness, turning the skies above Earth into a battlefield of desperate survival. Aboard the renegade Dawn, alarms blared as the ship weaved through the chaos. Cass shouted from the gunnery seat. "We've got Dominion bombers inbound. They're going for the Exodus fleet." Serena gritted her teeth, yanking the controls hard. "Not on my watch." She sent the ship into a steep dive, dodging debris and enemy fire. Behind them, human fighters intercepted the Dominion bombers, exploding them in midair before they could reach their targets. Inside the war room, Kieran struggled to hold the defense line together. "We're holding, but barely. The Dominion is throwing everything at us." Rourke's eyes locked onto the massive Dominion flagship in the distance, Supreme Commander Vortha's personal dreadnought. If they were going to win, they had to cut off the head. "Then let's end this," Rourke growled. "We take out Vortha, and this war is over. ###the final push." Rourke gathered his team, Serena, Cass, Kieran, and a squad of hardened resistance fighters. Their mission was simple but impossible: board the Dominion flagship and kill Vortha. The renegade Dawn blasted toward the dreadnought, dodging fire as human warships provided cover. At the last second, the ship cloaked, a stolen Dominion stealth module giving them just enough of an edge. "Hold on!" Serena shouted as she executed a high-speed docking maneuver. The ship slammed into the side of the dreadnought, the airlocks connecting with a thunderous clank. The doors hissed open, and the team stormed inside. ### fighting through the beast. The hulls of the Dominion flagship were a nightmare, glistening with biomechanical walls, pulsating with eerie light. Ivath warriors emerged from the shadows, their insectoid limbs striking with brutal precision. Plasma fire lit up the corridors as the team fought their way forward. Cass fired a shotgun blast into a Ivath elite, sending it crashing against the wall. "Damn bugs don't know when to quit." Serena engaged a Ivath warlord in close combat, dodging razor-sharp claws before driving her blade into its throat. Kieran hacked into the ship's systems. "Almost there, just need a little more time." Rourke held the line, firing round after round into the advancing enemy. Then, the doors to the command center slid open. Inside, Supreme Commander Vortha awaited them. ### the final confrontation. Vortha stood at the center of the bridge, towering and monstrous. His armor pulsed with Dominion energy, his 6 crimson eyes locked onto Rourke. "You think you've won?" Vortha's voice was a deep, chittering growl. "You are insects beneath our feet. This is not your victory, this is your extermination." Rourke raised his rifle. "We'll see about that." Vortha lunged. The battle was savage. Serena and Cass attacked from both sides, blades and bullets clashing against Vortha's impenetrable hide. The Ivath warlord moved with terrifying speed, deflecting attacks and slamming Cass into the control console. Kieran shouted, "We have to overload the core. It's the only way." Rourke wiped blood from his mouth, nodding. "Do it." Kieran activated the self-destruct sequence. The ship would go down, with or without them. But Vortha wasn't finished. With a roar, the Ivath commander impaled Kieran through the chest, lifting him off the ground. "Kieran!" Rourke shouted. Kieran, bloodied but defiant, grinned through the pain. "I told you, we don't go down easy." He pulled a grenade from his belt, ***, and detonated it in Vortha's face ***. The explosion ripped the warlord apart, sending a shockwave through the bridge. The team barely had time to react as the ship began to collapse around them. Serena grabbed Rourke. "We have to go." They sprinted toward the docking bay as fires erupted through the corridors. The renegade Dawn hovered just outside, the doors open. Cass leaped in first, then Serena. Rourke took one last look back, then jumped. The ship blasted away just as the Dominion flagship erupted into a supernova of destruction. #### victory at a cost. As the flagship fell, the entire Dominion fleet faltered. Leaderless and in chaos, their forces began to retreat. The humans pressed the advantage, driving the Ivath into full retreat. One by one, Dominion ships fled the system. Humanity had won. On the renegade Dawn, Rourke stood in the observation deck, watching the remnants of the battle fade into silence. Serena stood beside him. "It's over." Rourke exhaled. "For now." Cass, bruised but grinning, leaned against the doorway. "So, what do we do now?" Rourke smirked. "Now? We rebuild. We hunt down the last of the Dominion. And we make damn sure they never come back." Humanity had faced extinction. And won. The war was over. But the fight for the future was just beginning.